Another showdown on Capitol Hill. House Republicans are pushing for cuts to government funding, raising the risk of a possible government shutdown. The House Appropriations Committee adopted spending targets for the next fiscal year below what was agreed on in the debt ceiling deal. And Speaker McCarthy promised conservative lawmakers to focus on reducing spending. Multiple House Freedom Caucus members have expressed anger at McCarthy over that debt limit agreement. CBS News congressional correspondent Scott MacFarlane joins us now. Scott, for the lay of people out here who aren't following it every minute by minute like you, what the heck is going on Capitol Hill? They had a debt ceiling deal on spending. Now it's all being revised. Take us inside.
Got a big fat case of buyer's remorse going on inside the Capitol. A group of House Republicans don't like the deal that was cut. And it's clear, even though they've let the train get back on the tracks, they've let the House continue functioning over the next few weeks and next few months, this train is headed to a station where the rails are broken and a derailment is possible. A government shutdown isn't just a possibility, it's an increasing likelihood because they don't like that deal cut to end the debt ceiling crisis. Let me give you a bottom line here. Some number of House Republicans who, oh, by the way, control the purse strings and control the majority in the U.S. House want to cut spending down to a lower level. That could be a deal breaker, not just with their colleagues in the House, but most certainly with the Senate. We're looking at two different pairs of train tracks that are going in different directions.
Scott,
we brought our questions to the Senate. Go ahead, Bob.
Just let's pull back here for just a second. So there was a debt ceiling deal on spending. It passed both chambers and was signed by the president, correct?
Absolutely.
So when you say a government shutdown is possible, how so? If the deal's already been cut and it's been signed into law by the president, what derails the train specifically?
Yeah, so the debt ceiling deal averted the debt ceiling crisis and a default on America's debt, which could have been catastrophic to the economy. We are still in appropriations season, though, in Washington. In fact, there were hearings going on today, business meetings underway today. They have to appropriate money for the government to function in 2024. That's a process. Sometimes it gets a little bit ugly. It's caused some government shutdowns in the past. But there are members of the House Freedom Caucus who are on or involved with the appropriations process, on the committee or involved with the negotiations, and they want to scale spending back to a lower level. And that's going to run afoul of what the senators want to do and what others in the House want to do. They still have to appropriate for 2024. Take a listen to what Senator John Thune, in Republican leadership in the Senate, had to say when we asked him about the prospect of a government shutdown.
What's your level of concern of a government shutdown based on what you're seeing in the House right now? Is this a real risk in your mind?
It's always, these funding issues are always hard. We just came out of a big, debt limit deal, which sets the top line numbers, and we'll be able to get a process in place that allows us to fund the government so we don't have a shutdown scenario.
This is an issue to watch over the coming weeks and months. Bob, if you're wondering when the next blow-up between the House Freedom Caucus and the House Speaker is likely, it's during that appropriations process.
But if they don't come up with an appropriations deal on spending, so because this is confusing for a lot of people, there's a debt ceiling deal to avert the debt ceiling from being a crisis moment where the fiscal house of the country is put at risk. But if they don't come up with an agreement, let's say, on this appropriations, which is really just the funding for all these programs, couldn't they just pass that CR, what's called a continuing resolution, to keep things as is?
It's maddening how many Washington phrases are in this, right? But it's necessary to go through them. The appropriations process is, the dissemination of taxpayer money. A continuing resolution could avert a government shutdown. What does that mean? A temporary spending plan to prevent a government shutdown. But here's the reality, and it's increasingly clear as this week goes on, Bob. There's no guaranteed Republican majority votes for any of the things I just described and that you just described, because you have House Freedom Caucus members who are not only dissatisfied with the level of spending that came out of that compromise and the path forward, but they're concerned about how leadership's handling things in principle. And when you start dealing with problems that are in principle, you are dealing with things that could cause derailments in the legislative process and potentially lead to a government shutdown.
And Scott, one final thing on this spending standoff. You heard from Senator John Thune, saw you right outside the Senate steps with him. What about Leader McConnell? Does he step in at some point and cut a deal with President Biden, or is this again going to be something where the House Republicans, Speaker McCarthy, have to cut a deal with the White House?
That is a great question, because that really will define what happens. Who are the stakeholders? Who are the people who are at the table? Last time it was the Speaker and President, and it's still a bit of a mess in the U.S. House.
Scott MacFarlane tracking it all. Thank you for joining us.